But I am so excited to be here tonight. I know I can't, I know all of us probably have lost track of time. Those, I see some familiar faces. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe it was 3 years ago. I completely lost track of time. But today, it's always a good opportunity to just be a refresher. I think as women, it is important for us to be financially confident, to be able to make informed decisions. We certainly over the last year, experienced a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns, and it does feel like we have a light at the end of this tunnel. But the economic recovery is, it's going to be a long recovery, right? And I know that it's probably impacted all of you, especially in certain capacities, because it affected so many different industries. The pandemic, and again, it highlights the fact that when you do have a plan in place, it allows you to really step into a power position and make abundant decision, or make decisions out of abundance versus fear. And that is really what's the most important thing, is that when we're in a fear-based, when we make fear-based decisions in any aspect of our lives, it really doesn't allow you to set yourself up for success. So my mission, my passion is to help women, again, really feel like this topic of money. You guys are all creative and amazing at what you do in the architectural and design world. I don't know much. I don't have that skill set, right? I work a lot with people in your field, but at the end of the day, that's not my lane. So if I need that, I need to go to you guys. Whereas when it comes to money, I stay in the lane of money. And so that's where I think it's really about understanding that money isn't as complicated as we feel. I think one of the limiting beliefs that I hear so much, is that I'm not good at money, or that money is not my thing. So today, I always, and those of you that heard me speak before, a lot of what we've talked about before will definitely come up today, but I like to frame it in a four-step framework. And we're going to, when we kind of collaborated on this, we said, hey, let's break this down into two parts. So what we're going to talk about really is the first half, so we can dedicate all of next week to the topic around investing, how to invest your dollars, and retirement, because I always find that needs a little bit of a deeper dive. So today we're going to cover the first 3 steps of this 4-step framework. And as Sarah said at the beginning, want this to be collaborative, want this to be interactive. I'm certainly going to, share a lot of information with you. But if there are, questions along the way, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll certainly be able to manage the chat and answer questions. So with that said, I am going to share my screen, but let me get you guys up on here, because what did I just do? We try to do a dry run of this, right? But Renee's still, I'm like, okay. Nope. Do you guys, hold on.
Don't see anything yet.
Okay. Okay. Do you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go into presentation mode from here,
All right.
because that's the only way I know how to still see everyone. Okay. Okay. You guys see my screen and everything?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. So today we're going to, again, talk about the framework and how to build the empire that you deserve. Money is not as complicated as it sounds. We all bring a relationship, an existing relationship, to this conversation. And I'm going to frame this a lot around the mistakes that I see a lot of us making in these areas, because wealth really means whatever you want it to mean. Every single one of us has a different definition of success, has a different definition of wealth. It's really about how does that fit into the context of your life. It's not about your friend's life, it's not about your family's life. And so our journey is so personal, but that doesn't mean that there aren't there are vehicles out there that we all can leverage. I'm going to skip over that. With that said, is one of the limiting beliefs that I hear all the time is that this isn't the right time to plan. I'm going to wait until I have this and then I'll do it. That never happens because life, as we know, it's a roller coaster. It constantly is evolving. There's ups, there's downs, and if you keep waiting for this perfect time, you're going to continue to live the wrong life. So it's really about inspiring you to take action today. And what that means is really, again, relative to your particular situation. It's really important for us women to be able to be in a position of making decisions for ourselves, regardless of whether you're running a household by yourself or you're in partnership, is that we are controlling more and more wealth in this country. And the only way for us to continue to make sure that we're closing the wealth gap, the gender gap, and to be in control of even more wealth is the fact of having these conversations with each other, right? Is having presentations like this or having going back to, your girlfriends and not being afraid to talk about money. It does not mean that we have to walk around with what's in your, 401k or what's in your savings account on your forehead. But as women, we owe the next generation of women, they deserve to have the financial literacy for us to pass the baton on to them for another level of financial literacy. So you guys, I'll just reintroduce myself. I'm a certified financial planner. That may be the difference between, now and a few years ago is that in the last 2 years, I studied, which was 8 different courses and took my CFP exam. For those of you that I know all the designations and licenses you guys need, it's a journey to be to get that certification. So I'm definitely proud. I worked hard for it. The pandemic did. I'm not, obviously the pandemic was a challenging time, but I did take it at the beginning of last year, so I got some good studying time in. But yeah, my passion is to make sure that you're empowered. And in this modern generation, I hear all the time too is that, oh, my parents told me to do this, or my family members have told me to do this. At the end of the day, we're living in a very different financial world than our parents' generation and previous generations. So we have to make sure that we have modern strategies to match that. So tonight, this is my 4-step framework. We're going to go through the elevate your mindset, how to be the boss of your money, and how to dominate uncertainties. So next week, we can really dig into how to grow your empire. But elevating your mindset is the foundational piece because one, abundance is all of our birthright. And that's going to mean something different to all of us. And that is okay. We fall too much into a trap, especially in today's world with social media, with the internet. There's so much social comparison. So we see if someone has a house, that we should have a house, right? Or we should have this type of car, we should have this type of house. And as much as you guys all design, gorgeous designs, or can, or obviously are in that world, at the end of the day you have to look at your own personal situation. And I'm sure a lot of you can work with clients whose houses you may aspire to one day live in, and that's okay. But a house shouldn't be or anything in your life shouldn't be a curse. It should be a blessing. So that's where I find too many people getting caught up in the social comparison. It's really the foundation of your financial plan, because it's what is your relationship with money. We all come to this conversation with a money story. So a lot of times we don't recognize that. We don't want to think about that. We just think that we're supposed to arrive to adulthood and all of a sudden know how either money works, or we're afraid to ask the questions because we assume that everyone else knows how money's working and we didn't get that memo. We all have grown up, regardless of what your upbringing is that we've had either social or messages in our household that we developed and then developed a relationship with money. So we usually are having to unpack something, and that's okay. Sometimes that suitcase may be a little bit bigger than maybe the next person. But again, that is not about it's not about anyone else. It's about yourself to understand what your money story is So you can really unpack that and overcome those limiting beliefs to really be able to move forward. And no matter how well I can plan for someone, it doesn't help if I don't understand what is their why, what's driving you, and what are those limiting beliefs, because we may not all know. We may think we know some of our limiting beliefs, but sometimes our limiting beliefs really are hiding underneath our behaviors. Some of the common limiting beliefs are, I'll get my finances together when I make more money. When you make more money and you think that that day arrives and you make more money, but all of a sudden everything's going to be perfect, there's something else that's going to happen. So there again, there's never a perfect time. It's not about when I make more money or when I get into this house or when I get this designation, all of a sudden things are going to be the perfect time. The perfect time is now. You don't know your options to build wealth, and that's certainly understandable, because again, we're living in such an information age that you could go on the internet and you can drink from a fire hose and go into a rabbit hole on all these different ways to build wealth. Everyone has a different opinion. It's really important to make sure that you're building a plan that is personalized and customized for you. So anytime you hear someone saying, hey, this is what everyone should do, then you should run away. I have too much debt, right? The type, especially in your field, if you have student loans, it can feel really prohibitive in being able to move forward when you are paying for either, for student loans. If you own a home, you've credit cards, whatever it may be, it tends to hold people back. But that is one of the biggest mistakes I see, is that people are constantly so worried about their debt that they're not moving themselves forward. It really lends into, when I pay off this debt, that's when I'll finally be able to move forward or be able to invest and be able to save. But you've lost out on precious time. Now, when it comes to debt, there's good debt and there's bad debt. And you want to categorize that. Good debt, I know it can sound controversial, but it is student loans. But having the awareness as to what the amount of your student loans, the interest rates, are they federal, are they private? And good debt is mortgages. We don't necessarily want to pay down our mortgage because we lose also some of the tax benefits. Bad debt, there's no sugarcoating it. It's credit cards. A lot of people, if you're carrying credit card debt, don't vilify yourself, but it is knowing what your interest rate is and what your balances are. Another limiting belief is that I'll just pass this up. I'm not a money person. I am not a math person. And therefore, I'm just going to let someone else deal with it. I see too many women going through transitional phases of their life, not being in control because they let someone else deal with it. I can't afford to save. We all can afford to save, and I'll talk through that in how to be the boss of your money. And investing is way too complicated. I can promise you that it's not that complicated. It's just, in the media world, it sounds like it's more complicated. We also have to remember, which is why having these type of conversations and continuing these type of conversations, even if you just take one nugget today, two nuggets today, and continue to pass that on, is the more that we have these conversations with each other and continuing to just get more nuggets of information, whether by way of careful research or working with a professional like myself, that it becomes less and less complicated. We have to remember that the financial world was set up to be intimidating and to sound confusing. That is why there's so much jargon out there. And it was always at a disadvantage to women because historically, we were not the breadwinners of our household. We weren't the ones driving the household. So we have to now really shift that mindset. So I challenge you, if you guys are taking notes or if you're listening to or want to listen back to this, or just think about this, what are some 5 main money messages that you received from growing up or that you remember? One, I will use an example. One that I remember is something that my parents always told me, is that money does not grow on trees. I grew up comfortably. I grew up middle class. I wasn't super rich. We were, but I also wasn't, I wasn't, trying to find where my next meal was coming from. But at the end of the day, I knew that we always, the way that my parents taught me the value of a dollar was that it doesn't grow on trees. So as I entered into my adulthood, I rebelled against that. In my 20s, I thought money grew on trees, and I spent a ton of money by way of a credit card until I found myself $25,000 in debt, and I couldn't answer what the hell I got for that $25,000 other than Century City Mall had a ton of my money, and probably was Bloomingdale's because it was the old version of Century City Mall. But, I was like, I don't know, shoes, clothes. And that's, to me, was how I rebelled against that message that I heard from growing up. And write down some of those negative thoughts. For me, it felt like when I moved out here, and even though I had independence when I was in school, my true independence was when I moved out here as a young adult at 22 years old. And those negative feelings for me was that I want to rebel against that, and I'm going to prove my parents wrong, but not but that only ended up hurting me. So it's writing those things down and understanding how does that affect you, and just be aware of those thoughts and those feelings. How to be the boss of your money. This is the most important piece because you're the CEO of your life. No one else is. You are either the sole CEO or you're the co-CEO. But at the end of the day, you need to have the awareness as to what is going on in your household so you can direct dollars to the right places. Money doesn't work for you. I'm sorry, you don't work for money. Money works for you. And so every dollar should have a job description. If it doesn't have a job description, it's going to be in the driver's seat and you end up being in the passenger. And because we have the fear factor of not knowing or being afraid to look at what we're spending and how we're spending it, we sit too often and too long in that passenger seat. We worry too much about perfection than progress. We think about what the end goal is and not think about the steps there. And again, living in this social comparison world that we're living in, a lot of times what we're seeing on Instagram, Facebook, right, TikTok, all of this is the highlight reel. And I know that inherently we understand this, but we still let that's comparison creep in, and we see someone's success solely as the sum of its parts, as the complete sum, and not really looking at the steps along the way. So the perfectionism, and I speak as a recovering perfectionist. This used to be me, was that I had to have everything to be perfect in order for me to be able to move on to the next thing. And it prohibited me greatly in my financial life when I was younger. Every goal should have a plan, but every goal has to have it has to the plan has to be nimble enough where you can be flexible, because it really is about how can I show up every single day and make some sort of progress and take one step forward. Everything is going to be step by step. It's not, there is no A to Z. There is no shortcut. You have to be able to show up consistently, and that is what controls your mindset, your decisions, and your actions. Because when there are challenges or there's a bump in the road, is in order to not deviate, when we have that confidence, helps us control our mindset versus letting us kind of go completely off the rails. And that's where our behavioral actions start to show up and we start to make fear-based decisions. Understanding your why is really important. Without understanding your why, what is the point? Right? Why do you want to achieve that goal? We all have goals, we all have dreams. No one can say whether that's a good dream or not. That's your dream. That's your goal. Why do you want to achieve that? And really understand what it is that's motivating you. Because again, getting from point A to point B and having a plan towards that You hit a bump in the road and you don't understand your why, you're not going to go through those challenges in order to reap the reward. Not being aware of your cash flow. The reality is that budgeting, I hate that word budget. So if you take anything away from tonight, throw the word budget out of your vocabulary. Think about it as cash flow. That allows you to show up as the CEO of your life and not to be in a scarcity mindset around I'm limiting myself on a month-to-month basis. So when you don't have that awareness, and this is one thing that a lot of we all fall into this, we all can tend to fall into this trap, is just I don't want to deal with it. I just want to like run my life. I know what my expense, I'm paying expenses. I think I'm living within my means. Maybe I'm not living within my means. Maybe I'm like really stretched thin. Who knows? I just don't want to go do the work of looking at where my money is being spent. You have to do that. You have to have that awareness. And when your cash flow is mapped out into these three categories, it gives you the freedom to live for today, but also making sure that you're advocating for your future self. Every day that you do not have awareness as to where money is going, every day that you continue to say, hey, I don't want to deal with this, or I'm not a math person, or I don't like money, you are robbing your future self. The three main categories is fixed expenses. We all have fixed expenses. Those are the things that shit hits the fan, you still have to pay for it. The mortgage, the rent, the car payments, the insurances, all those things. Yes, over the last year, we may have had, in certain capacities, have had, maybe some leeway with certain expenses, the fixed expenses, but hopefully we never go through another pandemic again. So in our personal lives, we're going to hit there's going to be other unexpected expenses. So we need to make sure that we have, our fixed expenses covered. We understand what those are. Our variable expenses. This is the area where everyone goes off the handle, get completely derailed, because the reality is, this is why I hate the word budget. The reality is that no one's life is black and white on a piece of paper. So yes, we pay for things on a month-to-month basis. Maybe we don't pay for things. Maybe we pay for things every 2 months, every 3 months, or maybe it's once a year. Treat yourself to a nice vacation or whatever it may be. And so it kind of throws us for a loop when we're not able to, put our lives on a month-to-month basis in this little box. It's okay, but you have to have awareness is where are my lifestyle, where am I spending my dollars that would be considered lifestyles, that if shit hits the fan, I can cut out. I don't want to cut that out, but I could cut it out. Maybe I don't want, maybe for me, the things that I value, maybe something that Amanda doesn't value, or that Sarah doesn't value, or Carol doesn't value, and maybe it's vice versa. We all have things that we all value as part of our lifestyle, and have that awareness, because within that category, you should be thinking about it as negotiables and non-negotiables. Because if you're living within your means, you have the ability to do all three things. You have to pay for your fixed expenses within your limit, you can pay for variable expenses within your limit, and you can save and invest. Saving and investing are two different things, but it's considered advocating for your future self. We'll talk more about that next week. But on the variable side, if you're finding yourself living too close to the edge, and you're discounting your saving and investing, saying, I don't have the money to do that, this is where you have to look at your negotiables and your non-negotiables within your variable expenses. Your negotiables are the things that you are spending money, you don't realize that you're spending money on, or you consciously are spending money on, and that you don't need just to fill a void. That's what you need to cut out in order to be able to advocate for your future self. Your non-negotiables are the things that you are living within your means and say, hey, I work hard. These are the things that I enjoy, again, within your means, and I don't want to cut them out. That's where maybe I value something higher than Sarah does, or Amanda does, or vice versa, and that's okay. General rule of thumb is fixed expenses. For those of us living in Los Angeles, I usually say actually closer to 60%, and variables 20%, and then savings and investing is 20%. If you're not at 20% on the savings, don't walk away from tonight and say, well, I can't get to 20, therefore I just won't do anything. One is better than zero, two is better than one, three is better than two, and so forth. It's about making sure that you're advocating for your future self in some capacity. Too many people are unorganized with their accounts. We are living in a day and age where we're not working for just one employer for our entire career. So I see all of these old 401ks everywhere. And, it's like, how annoying would that be down the road that you got to track that down? You also are losing opportunity to make sure that those dollars are working cohesively for you. If you've all these different accounts, they're invested all differently. You probably don't know what even fund or funds they're in, and do they even match your risk tolerance and your goals? When you can have it one account where you know where it is and it's invested appropriately, and you could be making changes, which by way of what's called rebalancing, anytime when there are a consistent rebalancing, when there are changes to the market. If you're just leaving your account everywhere and not paying attention, you can't make those changes. So you are now being in the back seat, not even the passenger seat, but you're in the back seat of whatever allowing your account to do. And you're like, I don't know, maybe I'll arrive to retirement and have something. So making sure that you're taking inventory of your accounts. Those are your retirement accounts, your old retirement accounts, your new retirement accounts, your savings accounts, your checking accounts. We all, this day and age, I know a lot of us have different, multiple savings accounts or multiple checking accounts. You should have a savings account. You should have a checking account with a regular bank. You should also have what's called a high yield savings account, that in this day and age right now, they're not earning a ton of interest because of the low interest rate environment that we're living in. But you should have some sort of high yield savings account, because keeping all of your money in a regular savings or checking is not earning you anything. And make sure that you're paying down. The other thing, again, because it's such an emotional, it's such an emotional thing when it comes to debt, is a lot of people, we're not paying down our debt strategically. We go for what feels good versus what's really strategic. So if you want this is the cash flow management sheet that I work off of with clients. It really is a great outline for the major, fixed expenses, a lot of the discretionary expenses. Obviously there's going to be a there's a miscellaneous, right? There's a catch-all, because we all have maybe different things that we spend money on, and being able to look at your saving and investing. If this is helpful and you don't already have a system, or you want to use this to enhance your system, email me and I will send you this copy. It's interactive, so you can plug in the numbers, and this allows you. I have multiple, even for myself, I have multiple copies. I constantly am updating this as things are changing in my world, just to say, hey, can I afford this? If I plug in this number, then this is how other things are impacted. It shows you how your savings and your investing could be impacted. So just think about, and if you want to drop it in the chat, if you feel comfortable, just like, what's one area in your financial life right now that just feels a little messy, feels a little disorganized, and maybe just not ideal. And in the meantime, I did see something in the chat, so I will use this as a pause just to see how you guys are doing, any questions, and just to be able to answer the chat. Yes, a lot of people, Sarah, spend a lot of money on food, especially over the last year. So yeah, it's Seamless, it's Postmates, it's all of the DoorDashes. When you think about, when it comes to food, we all have to eat, so it's obvious, but too many people, we think about food as, we lump dining out and groceries in the same category. Groceries, you going to the grocery store and getting food from a grocery store, even if it's getting delivered, is that's a fixed expense. Dining out is a variable expense. Every single person should have some category of dining out. And it's just the reality is that you have to you if you think about your variable expenses as a fun bucket money versus if you have that intentionality and that awareness around how where dollars are going, then your variable side of your cash flow really becomes a fun bucket money. However you want to spend that relative to your resources. So I'll use an example. If you have $1,500 each month, if you want to spend $1,500 on dining out, that's on you. But that may prohibit you maybe that particular month if you know, hey, I'm going to spend $1,500. All my extra cash flow is going to dining out. Maybe I have a lot of things coming up this month. I just may need to sacrifice something else that month because I'm spending my fun bucket money on dining out. Um, Again, when you have that intentionality, you're able to really look at it from a macro perspective, and as a CEO, then feeling like, oh, I spend so much money on food, and I want to be able to do that, but I also want to be able to, move the needle forward in something else. I find living in LA, one thing that is messy for me is right now renting apartment means me do okay. Yes, investing is information overload. So that is why we're dedicating all next week to investing and also retirement planning. So I will answer all of your questions, and make it everything that I'm talking about tonight, right, is really for you to reflect back, and everything is on a high level. So it's for you to really reflect back and say, what are the nuggets of information that I can take away? Making sure that you're not making any of these mistakes. If you're making one of these mistakes, don't vilify yourself. We can only move forward and make sure that we're no longer making this mistake. And when it comes to investing, we're going to talk high level, but we'll certainly talk about that more tonight. And when it comes to living in LA, yeah, I mean, this can be the city could be very interesting, and it's a high cost living city, so we have to understand that. 401k versus emergency savings and paying off debt. This is an area where it's not an or, it really is an and again, because we don't want to lose every day that you are not or investing dollars. Saving is very different than investing, but every day that you are not putting your money into something for an opportunity for growth, you're costing yourself thousands and thousands of dollars because of the power of compound growth. And we'll certainly talk more about that next week. But the reality is that it's not a, do I put more money into the 401k or put more money into cash or pay off debt? Now, because of your resources, we may not in a perfect world be able to do it all. In a perfect world, we could do it all. Maybe we can't. So then we have to prioritize. And if we're having to prioritize, it's based on your particular situation. But it's never going to be just do 401k or put money into cash and then you save into the 401k and then pay off debt, or you pay off debt and then save. It's going to be a balance. So dominating your uncertainties is the third step in this framework. It is designed to feel like, I will use a sports analogy here, is that you, in any sort of sport, whether it's an individual sport, whether it's a team sport, is that you cannot win any sort of championship without playing defense. I'm a fanatical sports fan. So I use a lot of different maybe sports analogies in that aspect, but you cannot win the championship of peace of mind, financial security without playing some sort of defense. Now, that's going to mean something different to all of us depending on our situation. But one of the greatest mistakes that I see people overlooking is protecting their greatest asset. That greatest asset is you being able to generate an income for yourself. It's not the house that you're going to buy, that you're in today. It's not the house that one day you're going to buy. It's It's no material asset other than you being able to generate an income for yourself. Too often, we completely overlook that and we insure everything else around us. You guys work in the architectural and design world. You can't buy a home and decline homeowners insurance. You can't, that's not possible, right? But say that there was a choice. Would you buy a house, a multi-million-dollar house, and say, I don't want homeowners insurance? You're doing that with your income when you don't have what's called long-term disability insurance. Depending on the structure of your company, you may be offered this through your company, but it's usually a percentage of your gross salary. Because the employer is paying the premium, you are still exposed. There's a portion of your income that's exposed. If you want to make sure that you're protecting your greatest asset, you want to have the awareness around what your employer provides you and what that gap is between what your employer provides you and what your gross income is. I literally have seen example after example and example from this. I just had one last week when a client called me at 34 years old. We've been working together for the last 5 years, and she told me that she's just been diagnosed with rare cancer. If it wasn't for the disability insurance that we put in place, she would not have the peace of mind that she can go fight this disease and not worry about her finances. Because what the disability insurance is, it provides her her full check. Not only what she gets from her employer, but the supplemental piece. And all she has to do is focus her time and energy on fighting this disease. She's not leaving herself in a financial strain. And she certainly, when she does beat this, she's not leaving herself bankrupt and starting all over again. Life insurance, letting people, this is an uncomfortable part of the conversation. This is an area that we do not like to talk about, but it's certainly important to talk about. Especially if you have a family, you want a family one day, you own a home, you want to own a home one day. Think about, God forbid, something happens to you. Do you want your family, your legacy to be that your family needed a GoFundMe account? Because not thinking about it is letting your family, leaving that option open for the people that you love to have to set up a GoFundMe account. All life insurance is offsetting the financial burden of an emotional time. So every single person that you care about, you just want to make sure that things are tied together, that you're not leaving a mess, and that your legacy, in the event that there's an unexpected premature death, that your legacy is that my family is setting up a GoFundMe account and they're trying to have to scramble. And ignoring your legacy, making sure that you have wills, that you have trusts, right? If we have assets, we need to make sure that things are designated appropriately. When we don't have those things in place and we just say, I don't want to deal with it because it's too uncomfortable, I don't want to think about what happens if I'm not here, you're leaving your family and the people that you love susceptible to financial distress, and for the things that you value not to actually go to them or to the exact people that you want. Because when things go into probate, if you don't have, depending on your assets, you want to always have a will so something can be outlined how you desire, but that still that does not keep it out of the courts. That does not keep it out of what's called probate. That's what trusts do. So if you have a lot of assets or building assets like homes, you want to put those things in a trust. You want to make sure you have what's called designated beneficiaries on retirement accounts, on savings accounts, on checking accounts, any sort of investable assets. Because when you do have those designated beneficiaries, they automatically go to the person that you want. See, too often, and we also think that it's only for the rich and famous. But how many rich and famous people do we know that didn't have their shit together? The one person I can think about just off the top of my head that's coming to me is Prince, right? You think, oh, you got so much money, you should have it all together. Didn't. He did not care of what happened to his legacy, right? So then his family's fighting over it. Same thing with I can't think of his name offhand. James Galfino, I think, is the soprano guy. He did not have any sort of trust, will, nothing, no estate plan in place. The person who did, Kobe Bryant, right? And Kobe had his shit all tied very, very tightly. Did not know, right? Obviously, that was a tragic, tragic accident. So these are things that just because we don't have their net worth does not mean that we should not be thinking about our legacy. So think about, are you playing financial defense? And if you are, do you know what those pieces are? And do they need to be updated? Because your life changes, right? So a lot of times I think people like, oh yeah, I got this, but you got it 10 years ago before you had the mortgage or before you had kids. I think also just quickly, one of the other misconceptions is that I don't need these pieces if I don't have kids, I'm not married, I don't own a home, and I'm single. If you want any of these things one day, you have to be thinking about them. So that kind of concludes tonight's session, and we'll definitely take a deeper dive into the how to grow your empire, which includes the investing, the difference between saving and investing, difference of investing outside of your retirement accounts, different types of retirement accounts. But I will open it up for questions regarding the things tonight.
I think we have a question in the chat.
Mhm.
Renee, what steps do you advise to track cash flow and expense, monthly or bi-monthly accounting?
I think when you're getting set up and if you feel like it's a little sticky right now and you're not sure about where money is going, I would say is to sit down and without any sort of judgment or shame, is to look at the past 2 to 3 months of statements of either credit card bills or checking account, wherever you spend money and money comes out of, is look at where money is going and jot it down. And then from there is like, what are those things, and label, is this something that I'm paying monthly? Is this something that I'm paying, bi-monthly? Is this something that I'm paying every quarter, annual? And then start to organize it into a more organized, like, whether that's the spreadsheet, if you want my spreadsheet, or an Excel spreadsheet, or whether it's Mint, whether you're using an app, and kind of organize it from there. I always encourage a monthly date, to do a monthly money date with yourself and and if you're in partnership, then also with your partner. And if you're in partnership, is to understand and have these conversations with your partners, like, because again, just because we're in partnership with someone does not mean that we automatically share the same money philosophies and money values. So is to have a money date monthly to just make sure that you're on track, because I think that's what creates the discipline and the consistency and allows you as the CEO to show up. Any books, I mean, I think books, there is, and her name's completely escaping me, but like, oh, she's like the Jen. So, I mean, I'm not big on reading. I'm big on reading. I have to, let me rephrase that. I do like reading. But I think when it comes to money and reading a full money book, there's probably better ways for you to be spending your time. I think it's really about listening to more podcasts, like Planet Money, Her Money, which is by Gene Chatsky, and being able to take away snippets of information than trying to sit down and read a full book, because it's a lot, it's a lot. And I think in the context of trying to also digest the information, um it's I find a lot of people like it's just they're not walking away with the exact knowledge and level of knowledge that they're trying to get out of by spending time reading the full book. So I'm more of a proponent of podcasts. Um, and I just lost. Oh, websites I think are Nerd Wallet, The Balance are really good. Those are all, very generic in the fact that they're going to give you third party unbiased opinions about different financial topics.
There's another question. What is a good source to simplify and break down life insurances, trusts, etc.?
So, when it comes to insurances and different types, there's different types of life insurances. There's different, also with the disability insurance is, there's different types of insurances. That is really one, I think the Nerd Wallet, the Balance. If you just want to do a simple Google on like the different types of insurances, that's certainly out there. If it's more about in the context of what best fits you, that's when talking to an advisor, a financial planner, a financial advisor is important, because at the end of the day, you have to think about how do all these pieces fit into the context of an overall plan. If you're looking just for some insurance and say, hey, I need to fill the void of just needing to get some insurance, that's where an insurance agent, right? An insurance agent can kind of send you some quotes and say, hey, I'm here's the insurance. If you want to understand how insurance, what kind of coverage you need in the context of your particular situation and how does that affect the other pieces of your plan, and to protect all of that, that's when a financial advisor, financial planner comes into play.
Let's see. There's a question from Serena. Is there an app like Mint that you trust to consolidate your accounts for review?
Yeah, Mint. I do like Mint. Mint is a good one, and know your budget. I think it's called. Well, it's W. It's not W. YNAB. I don't know if the A stands for offhand. My brain is a little fried. So there's the A stands for something, but it's Y, not W. Sorry. This is like, yeah. I can type it in there.
Okay, sorry. Oh, perfect.
So
Thank
it's
you.
know your something budget, but my brain is not going to allow me to think about what that A is right now. You need a budget. That's what it is. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Those are the two, and I think there's so many different there in this day and age. There's so many ways to connect your dollars, but I'd be careful about what you're connecting certain information to. But certainly you need a budget, and Mint are the two ones that I trust the most and that I have a lot of clients working off of.
Richard asks, what recommendations or pointers do you suggest when looking for a high yield savings account?
In this day and age, you're not going to be earning, I think a year and a half ago, before the pandemic, it was close to like 2% in a high yield savings account. You're certainly not earning that anymore in a high yield savings account. You'll earn a little bit more than a regular savings account. The ones that I like, are I personally use Capital One. I've been using that for years when it was ING and now it's Capital One, but there's also Ally Bank. There's a new one out there called Affirm. There's American Express Savings. There's Marcus by Goldman Sachs. What you want to find is typically the reason why these are high yield savings accounts is because there aren't the brick and mortar locations there, and having to pay for all of the tellers, the human capital, and the brick and mortar, where they're able to help you earn. They're not, so the fees are not, your money is actually earning a little bit more interest and going to some fees to pay for all that. Maybe you're earning not even 0.5% these days, so don't get discouraged. It's just really the fact that we're in low interest rate environments. But I do think that generally speaking is that in your regular savings account, you should really have 3 to 6 months, ideally 6 months worth of living expenses in cash. And if you don't have that, if you don't have close to that, that's not meant to discourage you. It meant to kind of help you strive towards, let me get to where, if I have 1 month, let me make sure that I have 6 weeks, and just give yourself small goals to kind of, build up to. Um, I like to keep 2.5 months in my regular savings account, and everything else is in a high yield savings account.
Okay, Marisa asks, any thoughts on recommended credit cards to earn benefits or finding those? Anyway.
I'm a proponent of going on to credit, of having an account with Credit Karma. Credit Karma allows you to be know on a regular basis is your credit score. And based on your credit worthiness, they will provide recommendations around credit cards that will fit you, that can give you all different types of rewards and stuff like that. It's hard to say, I wouldn't say that, Chase or Citi or all these other, American Express, are better than the others, is because it really depends on the type of card. So I'm always a proponent. I think it's also great that you need to know your credit score be aware of what your credit score is. So go on Credit Karma and they'll provide you good recommendations based on your credit worthiness.
Okay, any other questions? You can type them in. Yep. Should you change credit cards regularly or does that ruin your score?
I don't, if you mean by changing credit scores by opening up different cards, if you have a card, I think the mistake that a lot of people make is that they no longer use the card and then they close it out. When you close a card, it closes your credit and your credit history. So you may want to leave the card open, you just may not use it. Um, but depending on your income and how much you already have on credit cards, or what other debt you may have, by opening up more cards, it can ding your credit score, because it's going to look like you have a credit limit that is, they're going to look at your debt to income ratio, which is what your credit score, a big portion of your credit score is. Um, it's okay to change credit cards, but you just want to be cognizant of that you're not opening up, like, 10 different cards at the same time so you can go spend, and with all high interest rates. But if you want to open up cards to be strategic because of the benefits, or maybe it's a lower rate interest rate card, then certainly that's okay. I just wouldn't close out the cards that you're not spending money on.
Okay, anyone else?
Well,
No.
if
Well, we can
if you
save our questions for next week too, Renee.
totally.
And I did put your email address in this chat as well.
Perfect.
So
Awesome.
I'm going to ask everyone to just unmute and clap and say thank you. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Hopefully this
Thank
was
you.
helpful. And yeah, next week, if you guys, don't stress if I said ladies and Richard, so, just wanted to call everyone out, but, and, don't stress if there's a question that comes up after this, as you're digesting this. Certainly we'll answer some questions next